It's 48 BCE. The young Queen Cleopatra is smuggled into the royal palace, rolled up in a carpet. She's fierce, cunning, and facing a battle for her throne, with rivals closing in from all sides. In that very palace stands Julius Caesar, the Roman general whose armies had conquered Gaul, a man who now holds unprecedented power in Rome. As the carpet unfurls, Cleopatra makes her entrance, determined, daring, and ready to risk everything on a man who could secure her future or destroy it. Caesar and Cleopatra's relationship was no ordinary alliance. What began as a calculated bid for power would become a force that shook both Rome and Egypt to their foundations. Together, they forged a partnership that defied expectations, ignited scandal, and forever altered the course of history. What happened when two of history's most ambitious leaders came together? And how did their story change the fate of empires? Let's see how it all unfolds. Julius Caesar's path to power was not born of luck or wealth, but of sheer audacity. While other men hesitated, he thrived in risk. Caesar was born in 100 BCE into a patrician family, but they weren't among the wealthiest of Rome's elite. In Rome, he understood quickly. The road to greatness required alliances, cunning, and a will that refused to bend. Caesar's resolve was evident early on. As a young man, Caesar nearly lost his life when the dictator Sulla, fearing Caesar's family ties to his enemies, almost ordered his execution. Caesar fled Rome to escape, showing even then an unyielding instinct for survival. This close brush with death marked him and fueled his relentless ambition. At just 25 years old, Caesar was captured by pirates on his way to Rhodes. But rather than cower, he seized the moment. The pirates, underestimating him, demanded a ransom. Caesar laughed and told them to raise it, insisting he was worth more. And while he waited for his ransom to arrive, he mingled with his captors, joining in their games and treating them as his own subordinates. The pirates were unnerved, but they couldn't have imagined what would come next. When Caesar was finally released, he tracked down each pirate and exacted a ruthless punishment, personally overseeing their crucifixion. This incident wasn't just about revenge. It was a glimpse into how Caesar would approach anyone who dared to challenge him. He was a man who would stop at nothing to fulfill his promises, whether to a friend or a foe. Back in Rome, Caesar faced fierce political rivalries. In the brutal arena of Roman politics, he knew he couldn't rise alone. To get ahead, Caesar sought alliances that would multiply his influence. He allied with Crassus, one of Rome's wealthiest citizens, and Pompey the Great, a general respected across the empire. Together, they formed the First Triumvirate, a powerful alliance that gave Caesar the support he needed to secure a consulship, one of Rome's highest offices. This alliance wasn't just strategic, it was essential. Crassus's wealth, Pompey's reputation, and Caesar's ambition forged a triad that no rival could easily undermine. With their backing, Caesar commanded legions in Gaul, where he would prove himself a military genius and win the loyalty of an army. For nearly a decade, Caesar waged brutal campaigns across Gaul, subjugating tribe after tribe, expanding Rome's borders to unprecedented limits. In his own memoirs, he recounts facing river crossings under attack, enduring sieges in freezing winters, and leading his men into territories no Roman general had dared to enter. By the end of his campaigns, Caesar was not just wealthy, he was revered. His conquests made him a war hero with an army loyal not to Rome, but to Caesar himself. Yet this power made him a threat in the eyes of the Senate. His old ally Pompey, now jealous and wary, turned the Senate against him, demanding that Caesar disband his army and return to Rome as a private citizen. Caesar faced a choice that would define history. Standing at the Rubicon River, the symbolic boundary of Roman territory, he paused. To cross with his army would mean defiance, civil war. He knew that this single act could brand him a traitor or secure his legacy as Rome's greatest hero. In that tense silence, he made his choice. "The die is cast," he declared, leading his legions across the river, sparking one of the most consequential conflicts in Rome's history. Months of brutal civil war followed. Caesar's tactical genius proved unstoppable. He chased Pompey across Greece, decisively defeating him at the Battle of Pharsalus. With Pompey's fall and eventual assassination, Caesar returned to Rome, now its unchallenged ruler. With power finally in his grasp, Caesar set about reshaping Rome. He redistributed land to his veterans, relieved the debts that weighed down the citizens, and extended Roman citizenship to allies in far-flung provinces. These reforms weren't mere policy, they were part of his grand vision. Caesar wasn't just stabilizing Rome, he was reimagining it as the heart of an empire. His reforms built him a loyal base and marked him as a visionary leader, but they also planted seeds of division among the Senate. Some viewed him as a tyrant, others as Rome's savior. Yet Caesar's gaze was set beyond Rome. He dreamed not of a republic bound by tradition, but of a unified empire with himself at its helm. He even reformed the Roman calendar, shaping daily life for generations to come, a bold assertion of his intent to leave a lasting mark on the world. In 48 BCE, Caesar turned his attention to Egypt, a kingdom divided by its own civil war, with the young queen Cleopatra and her brother Ptolemy III vying for the throne. Caesar saw Egypt's wealth, resources, and strategic position as keys to strengthening Rome's influence in the Mediterranean. But his arrival in Alexandria wasn't met with open arms. Tensions were high, and he found himself enmeshed in a volatile political landscape. Then Caesar met Cleopatra. Cleopatra's rise was as winding and treacherous as the Nile itself. Born into the Ptolemaic dynasty, a Macedonian Greek family that had ruled Egypt since Alexander the Great, Cleopatra inherited a kingdom that was a shadow of its former self. Egypt had once been a beacon of wealth and culture, but by the time of Cleopatra's birth, centuries of internal strife, foreign threats, and economic turmoil had left it weakened and divided. Yet, Cleopatra was no ordinary ruler. From a young age, she understood that if Egypt was to survive and thrive, she couldn't rule as her ancestors had. She needed to become one with the land and its people. Unlike other Ptolemaic rulers who saw themselves as Greek sovereigns ruling an Egyptian populace, Cleopatra took a different path. She immersed herself in the culture, learning the Egyptian language and presenting herself as a queen of the people. Fluent in multiple languages and skilled in politics, philosophy, and diplomacy, Cleopatra was preparing herself not just to sit on the throne, but to command it with purpose. When her father, Ptolemy III, died, Cleopatra, at the age of 18, found herself ascending the throne. But her position was far from secure. Egyptian law demanded she share the throne with her younger brother, Ptolemy XIII, a mere boy of 10. Cleopatra, however, wasn't content to play the passive role of co-ruler. She was determined to secure her power, reshape Egypt, and restore its prominence in the ancient world. But her ambition met with fierce resistance. Ptolemy XII's advisors saw Cleopatra's intelligence and influence as a threat to their own power, and tensions in the royal court quickly reached a breaking point. A faction supporting her brother, suspicious of Cleopatra's independence and ambition, conspired against her, seeking to strip her of her authority. Soon her brother's advisors, driven by jealousy and fear, turned her own family against her. As political schemes unfolded within the palace walls, Cleopatra found herself facing betrayal from all sides. Forced out of Alexandria under threat of assassination, she was stripped of her power and exiled from her own kingdom. Cleopatra had lost the throne, but not her resolve. She was already plotting her return. From exile, she began rallying support, seeking allies who shared her vision for Egypt's future. Meanwhile, Egypt's vulnerability was becoming a beacon for foreign interests. The kingdom's fertile lands, valuable resources, and strategic location had always made it attractive to outside powers, especially Rome. To the Romans, Egypt wasn't just another territory, it was a gateway to the Mediterranean and a vital source of grain. Rome's influence over Egypt had grown over the years, with Cleopatra's father having depended on Roman support to keep his throne. Now, with Cleopatra and her brother locked in a power struggle, the Roman Republic saw an opportunity to exert even more control over the Egyptian kingdom. It was at this moment, as Cleopatra plotted her return from exile, that news reached her of a new development. Julius Caesar, the most powerful man in Rome, had arrived in Alexandria. Caesar was in Egypt pursuing Pompey, his former ally turned rival, whom he had defeated in a civil war that had shaken the Roman Republic to its core. Cleopatra saw in Caesar's arrival not only an opportunity to regain her throne, but a chance to secure Egypt's future. Cleopatra knew she needed an alliance with Rome to reclaim her power, but she also understood that alliances came at a cost. Caesar was a man of ambition and strategy, capable of reshaping kingdoms for his own purposes. She couldn't simply appeal to him as a ruler seeking help. She needed to present herself as someone who could be as valuable to Caesar as he could be to her. Cleopatra was willing to gamble everything on a daring plan to capture Caesar's attention. Determined to meet Caesar on her terms, Cleopatra devised a bold scheme. She knew that her brother's faction would never allow her to approach him openly, so she planned to arrive in secret, creating a moment so striking that Caesar would have no choice but to notice her. The story goes that Cleopatra, with the help of her most loyal servants, arranged to be smuggled into Caesar's presence. She was wrapped in a carpet or bundle of linens, depending on the account, and delivered to the palace under the cover of darkness. The risk was enormous. If discovered, Cleopatra would face certain imprisonment or worse. But she was willing to take that chance. Cleopatra knew that this wasn't just about reclaiming her throne. It was about securing her vision for Egypt. She was determined to show Caesar that she was not a desperate queen in need of saving, but a ruler who understood power and was willing to risk everything to protect her kingdom. When Cleopatra finally stood before Julius Caesar in Alexandria, it was a meeting that would change the course of history. This young queen, bold and determined, was willing to risk everything to secure her throne and Egypt's future. Caesar, expecting nothing more than a petitioner, was captivated by Cleopatra's entrance, a daring move that showed her resolve and cunning. Smuggled into his quarters under cover of night, Cleopatra had arrived wrapped in linens like a prized offering. As she unfurled, her gaze met Caesar's, steady and full of purpose. Cleopatra wasn't just asking for help. She was here to negotiate as an equal. In this one meeting, Cleopatra laid her ambitions bare. She spoke of Egypt's potential, its struggles, and her vision to restore it as a powerful and independent kingdom. Her words were chosen carefully, each one a calculated risk to reveal her intelligence and determination without appearing desperate. Cleopatra didn't plead, she proposed. She offered Caesar a partnership, showing him that Egypt, under her leadership, could be Rome's strongest ally in the region. Caesar was intrigued. This was no ordinary ruler, and he recognized an ambition in Cleopatra that mirrored his own. He had come to Egypt to confront Pompey, his rival, only to discover that Ptolemy III, Cleopatra's younger brother, had already assassinated him in a misguided bid to gain Caesar's favor. The murder of Pompey had left Caesar conflicted and uncertain about his next move in Egypt. But Cleopatra's presence offered a new opportunity, a chance to stabilize Egypt and to gain a powerful ally who could provide him with wealth, resources, and influence in the Mediterranean. Supporting Cleopatra was not a simple decision for Caesar. He knew that aligning himself with a foreign queen would stir suspicion and resentment back in Rome. Yet Cleopatra had presented him with a vision that went beyond Egypt, hinting at an alliance that could benefit both kingdoms immensely. Caesar understood the strategic value of Egypt's grain, wealth, and control over critical trade routes. A stable Egypt under Cleopatra's rule could secure Rome's interests and provide Caesar with the resources he needed for future campaigns. For Cleopatra, aligning herself with Caesar was a gamble of life and death. She knew that only with Caesar's support could she reclaim her throne from her brother's faction. But she also understood the delicate balance she had to strike, for she was keenly aware that Rome's assistance often came at the price of autonomy. Cleopatra was prepared to give Caesar what he wanted in exchange for her rule, but only to a point. She had no intention of letting Egypt become a mere puppet of Rome. In this partnership, Cleopatra envisioned Egypt not as a subordinate, but as an equal. With their alliance formed, Caesar and Cleopatra prepared to confront the forces of Ptolemy III. Cleopatra's younger brother commanded a much larger army, and he held Alexandria firmly under his control. But Caesar's disciplined legions, veterans of many campaigns, were unmatched in both loyalty and strategy. Cleopatra, leveraging her deep knowledge of Egypt, guided Caesar's forces through the landscape, helping them adapt to the Egyptian terrain and Ptolemy's tactics. The battle for Alexandria was fierce. The city's streets, once symbols of Egypt's splendor, became the site of brutal conflict. Caesar's men, although outnumbered, fought with unmatched discipline, following their leader with unwavering loyalty. Together, Caesar's strategic genius and Cleopatra's knowledge of her people proved an unstoppable combination. In the final confrontation, Ptolemy III's forces were routed, and the young king perished, leaving Cleopatra as the sole ruler of Egypt. With Ptolemy gone, Cleopatra reclaimed her throne, now secured by her alliance with Caesar. Her people greeted her return with celebration and relief, viewing her as a queen who had defied all odds. Cleopatra, however, understood that her victory was only the beginning. She was now free to rule, but her position was still precarious. In the eyes of the world, she had aligned herself with Rome, and that alliance came with expectations. Cleopatra wasted no time in beginning the work of restoring her kingdom. Her first acts as queen focused on stabilizing Egypt's economy, reviving trade, and strengthening her people's confidence in her rule. With Caesar's support, she implemented reforms designed to repair the damage of years of internal strife and neglect. To the Egyptians, Cleopatra's return symbolized hope, a promise that Egypt's golden age could still be restored. But as Cleopatra solidified her position, tensions began to rise outside Egypt. News of Caesar's close alliance with Cleopatra spread quickly to Rome, sparking rumors and speculation. Many Romans viewed Cleopatra as an exotic and mysterious foreign queen, a symbol of the East's allure but also its danger. Caesar's alliance with her unsettled the Roman Senate, who feared her influence and the power she wielded as a result of her partnership with Caesar. Cleopatra's return to power was not just a victory for Egypt, it was a move that threatened the traditional balance of power. Once Caesar and Cleopatra's alliance was solidified, they wasted no time putting their partnership to work. Both understood that their combined power offered unique opportunities, but it also came with risks that could alter the course of history. Caesar needed stability in Egypt, the region that supplied Rome's crucial grain, while Cleopatra aimed to establish herself as a powerful and independent ruler. Together, they created a political alliance that would shock the ancient world, challenging tradition and setting the stage for a new order. Though Caesar appeared unshakable, his hold over Rome was far from absolute. Despite his military victories and public popularity, the Senate viewed him with suspicion, fearing that his ambitions would undermine the Republic. Cleopatra's influence added fuel to this fire, with many Roman elites concerned that this foreign queen could pull Caesar away from Rome's traditions. However, Caesar dismissed these concerns, presenting his alliance with Cleopatra as a strategic move, a chance to secure Egypt's stability without a costly military occupation, showing that he could expand Rome's influence through diplomacy as well as force. For Cleopatra, Caesar's support was critical to her survival, but she saw it as more than a safety net. With Caesar's backing, she implemented sweeping reforms across Egypt, investing in trade networks, revamping infrastructure, and reviving the economy. Cleopatra envisioned an Egypt that would be a Mediterranean power, an equal partner with Rome, not a subordinate kingdom. Her reforms showed she was serious about her role as a ruler and was intent on building Egypt into a nation that could command respect. As their alliance took shape, Caesar invited Cleopatra to Rome, a bold political statement to legitimize her rule in the eyes of the Roman public. For Caesar, her presence represented the success of his foreign policies and his ability to forge alliances with powerful rulers outside Roman borders. But Cleopatra's visit was not without controversy. Her presence sparked fascination among the Roman public, but it also stoked fears in the Senate, where many saw her as a symbol of Eastern influence that threatened Rome's values. For Cleopatra, Rome was an opportunity as well as a challenge. While there, she studied Rome's political landscape, met with senators, and subtly demonstrated Egypt's own grandeur. She recognized that her position in Rome offered her unique insight into the empire that controlled much of the known world. Through her alliance with Caesar, she sought to remind Rome that Egypt was a powerful, autonomous kingdom, not merely a dependent territory. However, Cleopatra's time in Rome only heightened the Senate's mistrust of Caesar. To them, she represented a shift in Caesar's priorities. Fearing that Cleopatra's influence might sway him toward monarchy, many senators worried that Caesar's ambitions went beyond the Republic's ideals. Whispers of a grander vision, a merging of East and West, circulated through Rome, with some fearing that Caesar and Cleopatra's alliance was leading them toward a new imperial order that would undermine Roman tradition. For both Caesar and Cleopatra, their alliance held great promise. Caesar saw the partnership as part of his larger strategy to expand Rome's influence, using Egypt's resources to strengthen his power at home. Meanwhile, Cleopatra understood that Rome's support could elevate Egypt's standing in the Mediterranean. Together, they represented the potential for an unprecedented political union, one that combined Egypt's wealth and resources with Rome's military and cultural influence. But their partnership came with significant risks. Caesar's closest allies began to question his loyalty to Rome's republican values, and fears that he might declare himself king became widespread. Cleopatra's influence became a focal point in these suspicions, with some Romans viewing her as a threat to the Republic itself. The tension in Rome grew, and as Caesar's power increased, so did the opposition from within the Senate. The idea of uniting Rome's might with Egypt's resources was both inspiring and terrifying for Rome's elite. Caesar's opponents feared that his alliance with Cleopatra hinted at a monarchy that could dissolve the Republic, a fear that would soon become a rallying point for those who opposed him. Despite the scrutiny and suspicion, Caesar and Cleopatra continued to pursue their shared vision, Aware that they were shaping a new era, Cleopatra knew that her partnership with Caesar was a gamble with her kingdom's future at stake, and Caesar, too, understood the risks. Together, they pressed forward, each willing to take on the challenges and opposition they faced in pursuit of their ambitions. As Caesar and Cleopatra's alliance deepened, so did the rumors surrounding their relationship. What began as a strategic partnership quickly transformed into one of the most infamous romances of the ancient world. Cleopatra, the young queen who had already captivated Caesar with her intellect and ambition, became a greater fascination in Rome, where stories of their relationship sparked endless speculation and controversy. The Roman public was captivated by the idea of Caesar, a man known for his discipline and calculated moves, falling for a foreign queen. Cleopatra's presence in his life seemed to defy expectations, challenging everything they thought they knew about him. In Egypt, her rule was strengthened by her bond with Caesar, but in Rome, the scandal of their romance began to overshadow their political achievements. Cleopatra became the subject of Roman gossip, portrayed by some as a cunning seductress who had bewitched Caesar, while others admired her courage and intelligence. Their relationship faced constant scrutiny, especially when Cleopatra arrived in Rome alongside Caesar. Her very appearance was enough to stir the Senate and the public. Cleopatra's attire, rich with Egyptian symbols, and her retinue, dressed in the style of Egyptian nobility, brought an exotic aura that many Romans found both intriguing and unsettling. She represented the grandeur and mystery of Egypt, a powerful queen whose presence in Rome was as much a statement of her alliance with Caesar as it was a declaration of her independence. Cleopatra knew her arrival would provoke outrage, but she faced it with regal composure. For Cleopatra, love and loyalty demanded courage, and she was willing to stand as Caesar's partner, whatever the cost. Her courage fascinated Caesar even more, drawing him closer to her. She was not just a queen. She was a force of nature, someone who could stand before the might of Rome with confidence and conviction. Caesar, despite the whispers and political backlash, was captivated by Cleopatra's presence. He even went as far as commissioning a statue of her in the Temple of Venus Genetrix, honoring her as a living deity, a gesture that astonished and outraged many in Rome. To some Romans, this was an affront to their traditions and an alarming display of Caesar's devotion to a foreign ruler. They feared that Cleopatra's influence might lead Caesar to abandon his Roman roots. But for Caesar, Cleopatra was more than a romantic interest. She was a symbol of his ambition to expand Rome's reach across the Mediterranean. The scandal surrounding Caesar and Cleopatra's relationship highlighted the cultural clash between Rome and Egypt. While Rome prided itself on strict social hierarchies and traditions, Cleopatra's public role as a female ruler defied convention. Her intelligence, wit, and political acumen made her an equal to Caesar, a partnership almost unheard of in both Rome and Egypt. Yet the closeness of their relationship raised fears among Rome's elite that Cleopatra might sway Caesar to adopt foreign ways, endangering the ideals that defined Roman life. Despite the discontent among Rome's ruling class, Caesar's dedication to Cleopatra was unwavering. In her, he found a partner who matched his vision and ambition. Cleopatra had shown herself not only as a capable ruler, but as a strategic mind who could support his goals. Together, they dreamed of a united empire that combined Rome's military might with Egypt's wealth and resources. Caesar saw Cleopatra as a partner who shared his dreams of reshaping the ancient world, an equal who understood the weight of leadership and the risks of ambition. Cleopatra, in turn, was deeply committed to Caesar, seeing in him a partner who could elevate her kingdom to new heights. She knew the risks of their bond, that aligning herself with Caesar could jeopardize her future if Rome turned against him. But Cleopatra was willing to take the gamble. She believed that their combined power could create a new balance in the Mediterranean, one where Egypt could reclaim its position as a powerful civilization alongside Rome. Yet as scandalous as their romance appeared, it was also a deep bond built on mutual respect and shared purpose. Cleopatra saw in Caesar not just a powerful ally, but a partner who truly understood her vision for a grander, united empire. Caesar valued Cleopatra's counsel, her understanding of Eastern politics, and her strategic insights, finding in her an advisor who could see far beyond her own borders. Their love, though controversial, was genuine, and it was this authenticity that made their partnership all the more compelling and all the more dangerous in the eyes of Rome. As their relationship grew, so did the tension back home. Caesar's devotion to Cleopatra led many to question his loyalty to Rome. The Senate watched in apprehension, wary of Cleopatra's influence and the way it seemed to blur the lines between ally and ruler. Cleopatra was keenly aware of these dangers, but her faith in Caesar remained steadfast. She believed in their shared vision, even as the opposition around them grew stronger. As Caesar's power in Rome grew, so did the resistance against him. His relationship with Cleopatra had intensified suspicions among Rome's elite, who feared that Caesar might seek to crown himself king, a title deeply taboo in the Roman Republic. To the conservative senators, Caesar's increasing influence, combined with his connection to the Egyptian queen, was a direct threat to Rome's traditions. The idea of a monarch ruling over Rome was unthinkable to them, and Caesar's audacity pushed their fears to a breaking point. Despite murmurs of dissent, Caesar seemed undeterred. Confident in his popularity and the reforms he implemented, he continued to consolidate power, strengthening Rome's infrastructure and extending his influence over the Senate. Many of these reforms were popular among the people, but to his political enemies they were the acts of a ruler who sought absolute control. His alliance with Cleopatra, who ruled in her own right as Egypt's queen, only fueled these anxieties. To some Romans, Cleopatra represented Eastern luxury and the decadence of monarchy, a symbol of what Caesar might bring into their republic. Then came the title that changed everything: dictator for life. To Caesar, it was a necessary recognition of his leadership, but to the Senate, it was a final betrayal of Rome's republican ideals. The title seemed to confirm their worst fears, and Caesar's confidence emboldened his enemies. Among the senators, unease turned to alarm, and the whispers of a conspiracy grew louder. For those who saw themselves as guardians of the Republic, it became clear that the only way to protect Rome was to remove Caesar from power, by any means necessary. In the days leading up to the Ides of March, 44 BCE, the conspiracy took shape. A group of senators, including some of Caesar's closest allies, gathered in secrecy to plan his assassination. These men, who believed they were acting for the good of Rome, knew they were risking everything. They feared that if Caesar remained in power, the Republic would be lost and Rome would descend into monarchy. Among the conspirators was Brutus, a man Caesar loved like a son, who believed that by sacrificing Caesar, he could save Rome. On the fateful day, Caesar entered the Senate, surrounded by men he considered friends and allies. But as he approached, the conspirators closed in, striking him repeatedly. Each blow was delivered by a senator who believed that by taking part, he was ensuring Rome's survival. But for Caesar, the ultimate betrayal came when he saw Brutus among them, blade drawn. In that moment, Caesar's strength faded, and as he fell, he looked upon Brutus, uttering the famous words, "Et tu, Brute?" Caesar's death marked the end of an era. The once unbreakable ruler was brought down by those closest to him, and with him, Rome's future was thrown into chaos. Far from saving the Republic, his assassination set off a chain of events that would plunge Rome into further turmoil and bloodshed. In Alexandria, Cleopatra received the news of Caesar's assassination with a shock that reverberated throughout her kingdom. She knew immediately that her world had changed. Caesar had been more than an ally. He had been her protector, her partner in ambition, and her link to the Roman power that secured her throne. Without Caesar, Cleopatra was vulnerable, left to face an uncertain future without the man who had guaranteed her place in Egypt. For Cleopatra, the loss was deeply personal as well as political. She had placed her faith in Caesar, believing that together they could shape a new future for their empires. With him gone, Cleopatra was left isolated, with few allies she could trust. In Rome's chaos, she knew she would need to act quickly to preserve her rule. Egypt's security had always depended on her alliance with Rome, and now that alliance lay in ruins. Caesar's death left Cleopatra's position in jeopardy. The alliance that had once promised to reshape the ancient world was now shattered. Rome was descending into civil war, and Cleopatra, once confident in her future, was forced to rethink her strategy to secure her throne. She faced a world that saw her as the queen who had captivated Caesar, a foreign ruler whose influence many Romans now regarded with suspicion. But Cleopatra was no stranger to adversity. She understood that Egypt's future depended on her resilience and her ability to navigate Rome's shifting power dynamics. With Caesar gone, she knew she would have to forge new alliances, to adapt her vision to a world that had changed overnight. As Egypt's queen, she would face the uncertainty ahead with the same courage that had brought her to Caesar's side. The story of Julius Caesar and Cleopatra remains one of history's most powerful and controversial alliances, a partnership that shaped the ancient world and left a legacy that endures even today. Together, they symbolize the convergence of two great civilizations: Rome, with its disciplined armies and powerful political machinery, and Egypt, with its ancient culture, vast wealth, and influence across the Mediterranean. Their relationship was more than a romance. It was a union of ambition, strategy, and vision. Through Caesar, Cleopatra secured her throne and elevated Egypt as a significant player in the ancient world. Through Cleopatra, Caesar demonstrated his vision for a Rome unconfined by traditional borders, willing to engage with powerful allies from different worlds. Yet this bold union sparked fear and resistance among those who saw their alliance as a threat, setting in motion events that led to Caesar's tragic end. After Caesar's assassination, Cleopatra's life became a series of high-stakes battles, both political and personal. She fought to maintain Egypt's independence even as Rome's power grew more oppressive. She would later form another famous alliance, this time with Mark Antony, one of Caesar's closest allies and a leading Roman general. But like her bond with Caesar, this partnership would face bitter opposition, leading to another tragic end as Rome once again turned against her. Cleopatra's rule is a testament to her resilience, intelligence, and unyielding determination. Despite overwhelming challenges, she continued to fight for Egypt's sovereignty, navigating the turbulent political landscapes of both Egypt and Rome. Caesar's ambition and his alliance with a foreign queen marked him as a visionary, a leader willing to transcend tradition in pursuit of a unified empire, though he paid the ultimate price for his choices. The legacy of Caesar and Cleopatra endures, reminding us of the potential and the risks inherent in uniting different cultures and empires. Their lives together challenged the norms of their time and forever altered the course of history. They were figures who, for a brief moment, dared to dream of a world reshaped by their vision and their partnership. Today, their story resonates as a timeless reminder of the power of ambition, the allure of partnership, and the lasting impact of those bold enough to reshape the world. Julius Caesar and Cleopatra may have been separated by death, but their influence echoes across the ages, a reminder of a time when two of the ancient world's greatest leaders came together, leaving a mark that would never be forgotten.